Okay, so it is 7 o'clock my time, which is Eastern, and I guess we'll get started. I'm just adjusting my volume a little bit. Seems a little bit off. And it looks like, just give me a minute, one of my windows has gone crazy. So I don't know that, I don't think that I will have the Spotify playlist that I am playing. It doesn't want to show today, but it is the Drum and Bass Stream Beats playlist by Harris Heller. A lot of you, if you watch Twitch streams or YouTube videos, you're probably familiar with these playlists. A lot of streamers use them because they're copyright free. I really like it. I think it makes cool soundtrack for my music or for my stream. And yeah, so it's just not going to show up on the screen today. Unfortunately, I'm having some trouble with my overlays. Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Taryn, and I'm a Unity and game developer. I started learning Unity and game development last summer, so just over a year ago. I'd been coding on and off for several years, but I'd never really taken it super seriously before, and C#, which is the language that we use in Unity, was my first introduction to object-oriented programming. So that was definitely a change from the HTML and CSS that I had been doing prior to learning Unity, but I found that after a few weeks of really studying the content, I was able to grasp it, or to start to grasp it, and now here I am a year later streaming for you all. I'm definitely not an expert in Unity. I would consider myself sort of on the lower end maybe of intermediate, so I still have lots to learn, but I decided that I want to do it on camera, so that way if you are also interested in Unity, you can follow along. I want to give sort of a real glimpse into what it's like working in Unity. I'm starting off this stream with a huge bug that I will admit I don't really have a clue what's going on. I know that I could have gone off camera and fixed it, but I wanted to show what sort of the day-to-day use of Unity looks like. I do work on freelance work. That's like my day job for Unity, or in Unity, that's my day job, working on simulation and game development work. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of it is pretty mundane. You're doing a lot of bug fixing, you're doing a lot of dragging and dropping things into the inspector. And I think when people think of game development, they think like, oh, it's going to be so awesome. It's going to be like, now I'm old, so I can't think of any like games people would consider awesome, but it's going to be like some awesome AAA game at all times. And really there's a lot of very mundane sort of humdrum tasks that you need to do. It's a lot of putting little tiny blocks of code together to build something bigger. But you can't do it all at once. It does take a really long time to get a game to the stage where you want others to play it. So I'm going to be pulling back the curtain, I guess, and showing you how boring Unity development can really be. I'm kidding, because I really love Unity development, but there are some boring aspects. I am working with two different windows here because Unity, and this is the main Unity interface here. Oh, and I wonder if the reason I have this not working is because I have Unity in windowed mode, which I needed for a project I was working on earlier today. So this is the main Unity interface, and I'm also going to be using Visual Studio to show you my code, and I'm just going to double check that my overlays are working correctly, which they're not currently. So let me just pull up a script here for you. I don't know why my overlays are really giving me a hard time today. Okay, so there we have Visual Studio, and I thought it would be too much to have both the Unity interface and Visual Studio on the same screen at the same time, because lots of the Unity elements are like itty bitty and sort of even I am like squinting to try to see them. So I'm going to be using hotkeys to zip back and forth between Visual Studio and Unity. But if I'm ever blabbing on about something and it's not coming up on the screen, I've probably forgotten to switch back and forth. So please drop me a comment. And if you have any questions or anything, any comments, just want to say hi, please do so. I want this to be a pretty relaxed, chill stream. This is sort of my fun time where I'm not working. This project has no deadline. I mean, I guess a self-imposed deadline, but not really. So in the day, like I said, I'm working on projects that actually do have a deadline. I'm working on things that are actual deliverables. This is sort of a fun thing. A version of this game, which is called Gravedigger, is already on my itch page, which is Mystic Mill Games. It was built for the Game Dev TV Game Jam, which was back in the spring, and I did it in about maybe 7 or 8 days. It was my first time really doing a procedurally generated game space by myself, so not using a tutorial or anything like that. And I spent a lot of time, and you can't tell now because the game is now a mess. You're going to be like, this game sucks. It does now, yes, for sure. I spent a lot of time at the time going through and making it really smooth. I wanted to be really happy with the main game mechanic. I had fade screens and like really nice screen transitions and a good UI, or a UI that I was happy with. And I know that the philosophy when you do game jams is often to just like do what you can, but if there are pretty big bugs in it, that's still fine. I decided I wanted to challenge myself to make something that was fairly small in scope, but fairly polished, just to see what that process was like. So that is what my submission was. And it is a game sort of in the style of Minesweeper, where there are certain there are different graves which look like dirt piles, and you need to click on them, and certain graves are the good ones that you want to click on, and you want to get all of those before the time is up, and certain graves are the bad ones, and if you click 3 bad ones, then the level ends. And like I said, it was a fairly short game when I posted it for the Game Jam. There are 3 difficulty modes, which is something I added in to make it like a little to extend the gameplay time a little bit. But the purpose of these streams is to go in and extend the game and to make it more fun, to have more depth. I want to have like an overworld potentially, different levels, that sort of thing. So last we left off, once again, if this is your first time watching the stream, the game looks like a mess. Again, this is a reality of working in Unity. It's not going to look pretty all the time. I mean, working with any sort of code, it's not going to look pretty all the time. And I don't want to spend too much time fussing over the placement of things right now. I want to just basically nail down how I want the game to work now that I'm making these changes to it. So let's press play here and hope that we don't get a lovely Stack Overflow. Okay, so this is the main game space. The white squares are not supposed to be there. They are essentially markers, prefabbed markers that are showing me where the graves are going to spawn, and these are the graves. They're dirt piles. If you were in one of my last streams, I have some issue with some of the terminology that I've assigned to the prefab, so I'm going to be switching that. But anyway, the white squares show where the dirt piles are going to spawn. I have them in there so that way I can easily click on the rows, and I'm in play mode right now, so that's not going to work. So click on the rows. Where's row 1? There it is. And I can move the row up and down and actually see what I'm doing. But I will turn those white squares back down to invisible so they don't look ugly when I'm ready to. So the problem, and let's see if it's still persisting. Okay, so that was one problem. The screen faded in very ununiformly. Now I can't think of what that word would be. It's the end of the day. Okay, so we have this fader here. And let me see what the actual size of it is. Yeah. So the fader is just an image, and you can see over here in my inspector, you can see which components are on this game object. So over here in the hierarchy is where we can see which game objects are in the scene before playtime. So if you are instantiating a game object using a prefab during runtime, then it will appear over here in the hierarchy, but it isn't there right now. And with a game object selected, you can pop over to the inspector and see what components are on that inspector. So this is the fader. It's an image that starts at invisible. No, it doesn't start as invisible. It must be some way that I have it programmed. And now it's been months since I actually programmed this component, so I can't remember. But the idea is that it has an animation on it that will fade in and fade out when the scene loads. And right now, it is not covering the entire game space, which is why only part of the screen was showing the fader. So I'm just going to increase the size of that. The graphics that I'm using right now for this, I guess we'll call it like a prototype for now, are not built for this screen size. So they're really stretched out, but I will be getting new ones hopefully eventually. So let's just double check that fader is now working. Yes, so we saw the fade that was black and then it faded in. Perfect, so that's one thing solved. Now, when I click the graves, so that was a bad grave because a little skeleton came up. And this was a good grave. Okay, so what is happening is that, oh gosh, how do I explain this? So every time there are a certain number of good graves and bad graves, and it's hard to see because of how I have the canvas now, because the particle systems aren't showing up as well. But I'm just going to review this for myself as well. So when I hit this light button, it's hard to see because things are screwed up now, but it illuminates certain graves, and those graves are the bad graves that you don't want to click on. So you want to go through and click the good graves, and there are only a certain number of good graves in the scene. The good graves are the empty ones that don't do that. So it should generate a certain number of good graves and a certain number of bad graves at the beginning of each play. And like I said, it's procedurally generated, so no level is the same. Eventually, probably some level will be the same as another level, but the idea is that it should be fairly random. The problem is that every time, or the first time I click on a good grave, rather than just subtract 1 from the total number of good graves that exist in the scene, it's just putting that number to 0. So it's saying, okay, there are no more graves left to dig, no more good graves left to dig, which is obviously not what we want. So we're gonna have to figure this out. And I started to do that. A little bit last time. Okay, so we're in our code. So there's going to be a lot of debugging that we're going to be doing tonight and trying to figure out exactly what is happening. So I'm going to be switching back and forth between scripts, trying to figure out exactly what is wrong. And one of the problems, and I think one of the exciting challenges about this project, is that I wrote it, like I said, quite a while ago. I wrote it quickly, and the code's not great. It's not optimized for sure. So I'm dealing with code that I don't fully understand, that's very clunky, and I want to smooth it out, make it better, and fix the bugs. The game was working as it should have been working a few weeks ago, and now it's not. And I'm wondering if partly it was working sort of by fluke. Some of these things I don't actually see how they were ever running properly, the methods, but we'll see. Okay, So generate graves, dirt piles. Okay, so it's instantiating that. And then I'm gonna get rid of some of these commented out statements because they are really distracting. This one. And I'm gonna put this one back in so that we know how many dirt piles are being generated at the start of the scene. So print, there are this many dirt piles. And where am I actually... Okay, so when we generate the item, so there are a couple of different for loops that are running here. So first on every, this is where it's confusing, on every white square, which I call a dirt pile, we're going to put a grave. The grave, which actually looks like a dirt pile, is that going to have another for loop run for each of those graves, and it's going to generate an item. So the item is the thing that's going to be revealed when the player clicks on it. And if the number of piles... Okay, first of all, this is counting the number of piles that are the junk piles, which is not what I want. I want it to be counting the number of piles. Actually, I'm not sure because I'm not sure what terminology I've used. So this is the script that's actually, it's called the pile counter. It's actually keeping track of the number of piles that are in the scene, and then it's casting it down here to the UI. So the TextMesh Pro UI text box in the at the top of the screen in the game. So right now I have the pile remaining is the treasure piles minus the piles. Treasure piles is get dirt piles. Okay, so let's go back. I've got a couple of getters. And I feel like this is really confusing. So let's rename a couple of these things. So get treasure piles. Remember, if you're ever renaming a method or a variable, you want to do Control-RR in Visual Studio and hit apply. You'll see here, oh, I don't know if you can actually see this because sometimes, oh, I think maybe you can. Sometimes the little interface windows don't show up on the stream because I'd have to set up a separate window for them. But you can see here that it's going to update 2 references in 2 files. So you want to hit apply, or else you might be forgetting to change stuff. Okay, so that's get the treasure piles, which is dirt piles.length. I feel like maybe there's some confusion here in how I've named things. So the dirt piles are any objects with the tag grave. Oh my gosh, so I'm using, there's the dirt piles, and I'm calling those dirt piles grave, the tag. I mean, this is obviously really, really messed up. So I want to rename this dirt piles. It's the white squares. So I'm just trying to think of a good variable name for that. Whoops. I'm just going to call it spawn points for now. So once again, it's going to update. This time it's 6 references in 1 file. I feel like it's not that big of a deal when it's between, if it's just in 1 file and like you forget to rename everything. Okay, it is still sort of a big deal, but not as big a deal as if you had not renamed variables or methods that were spread across different classes. Okay, so the spawn points are going to be the objects with tag grave, and I'm going to actually go in right now and change that tag to match the variable name. So I'm going to head into my prefabs, and I'm going to take this is the white square, which I've called dirt pile. I'm going to call that. Let's first of all rename the object to spawn points. And hopefully this won't screw up anything in my hierarchy. Okay, and then I'm going to make a new tag actually over here. Not span point, spawn point. And when you're making a new tag in Unity, I often make the tag or make the layer and then I forget to go back to the object and actually assign it to that object. And then I'm like, why isn't this working? Okay, so and since I'm making those changes onto the prefab, everything should be fine. Let's just double check by going in here and clicking on a couple of these. They're still called dirt pile, but okay. But they do have the tag spawn point. So that's good. Okay, now let's go back into my code. So there are this many, let's change this print statement. There are this many spawn points. Okay, then we're gonna run it. We're going to generate graves for each of the spawn points, and let's change this as well to spawn point, because this is what is being passed into the generate graves. And is this actually a type game object? Yeah, it is. Okay. Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess it doesn't, the spawn points themselves don't actually have scripts on them, I don't believe, because I prefer to use the class name as the variable type when I can, but it's okay if it's game object. Okay, then for each of the spawn points, we're going to instantiate a grave. That seems to all be working fine. I'm going to set the transform. So this is setting the instance of the instantiated grave, childing it to the spawn point, because the way that the game is created is that everything essentially resides on a UI. I don't think this is the best way for me to make this, but this is how it is. So I'm going to continue with it. And that means that if we don't have objects childed to the canvas, they won't be visible. So that's why I've done that. For some reason, I had to change the scale through code, which I'm not really sure what's going on there, but okay. And then generate item. Okay, so I'm hoping that that loop continues to run. And then the item is basically, again, I've done this very messily, but I've instantiated a little tiny dot on each of the graves that is its own little game object in the hierarchy, and another script uses that dot as sort of a label to see whether or not the pile is a junk pile or a treasure pile. It's not great. Eventually I will probably go back and make that a lot less messy, but for now I'm just not going to care. Okay, so this is going to, so for every one of these, it's going to put up the number of piles. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the number of piles here and see what we're getting. So debugging in Unity is usually making a whole lot of statements printed to the console. Should probably be using debug.log instead of print, but oh well for now. So let's go to the console, and there are this many spawn points, 0. Well, that's not good. Oh, hold on 1 second here. I know you are still stuck in Unity. I'm just going to go back here. Oh, I know what the problem is. Maybe some of you spotted it, but I had forgotten to change the tag that identifies an object as a spawn point. I had it initially as grave, and now I want it to be spawn point. So I just quickly made that change. Okay, and there are this many spawn points, 90, which I haven't actually gone through and counted the number of white squares, but I'm going to assume it's about that. And then they're printing their name every time they create an instance of either a junk or a treasure. You can see there's an extra print statement in the console here. That was from some of the work with the camera that I was doing. But I'm just going to double click on that and comment it out. Okay, so back in our code, so here's the number of piles. We know that that is what it should be, so that's good. And then we're passing over, okay, I see, the treasure piles. So let's say for this, let's have two variables here. I'm going to have at the top treasure piles, which I'm going to initialize at 0, and junk piles, which I'm going to also initialize at 0. I like to have F there because it's a float. I don't know if you really need it there, but I'm just going to do it. Okay, so for this one, we're going to have the junk piles. Whoops, I don't know what I was writing there. And for this one, and let's put that inside the if statement, not outside of it. Treasure piles. Lovely. And okay, let's just print those. So we'll print. Now let's put that outside the statement. So print junk piles. And you know what? I'm going to put a string on there. So there are treasure piles. Treasure piles. And yeah, I'd like to put a string on the front of my debug statements because I end up having like a million numbers flying around the console, and I like to just see it all written out for me. So there are this many junk piles. Hi, welcome to the chat. Welcome to the stream. Looks like my Visual Studio went a little funky there. I don't know if you saw that, but hopefully everything is okay. So let's just play this. Okay, so it's doing it every time. Yeah, so maybe we should actually do this inside. I'm just gonna pop back over and put this inside the start method. Now there's a little bit of an issue with the order that the methods are being executed here, which is why I don't know if you saw, but I had an empty awake method in my script initially, and There must have been a reason for that, and I can't remember why, but something obviously needed to happen before start in probably one of my other classes. Oh, what game are you making? I'm expanding a Minesweeper style game. It's like a small demo style game that I made for a game jam a couple months ago. So I want it to be bigger because the initial version of the game was very small. There's just like one basic game mechanic, and so I want to expand it. Okay, so now we're getting what I wanted to see, which is that there are 45 treasure piles and 45 junk piles. Nice even split, which doesn't happen that often. Let's just play that again. When I'm working with a random factor, which I am in the case of determining whether or not a pile is a junk pile or a treasure pile, I like to just test it a few times just to make sure it's not giving me the same division between, you know, like 45-45 every single play, right? Because then the random factor is not working in that case. So we're getting, okay, 45-45. 52-38, perfect. That's what I like to see. Okay, let's go back into code. Just moving through this slowly. Yeah, I don't know, can you guys let me know in the chat if Visual Studio looks really screwed up on your screens? It doesn't look stretched out or anything weird. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure what's happening there. Hopefully that's a bit better. I don't know what is going on with my overlays tonight. So sorry about that. And my little picture is cutting things off as well. Okay. So we know that we're the variable treasure piles and junk piles, we're saving the correct number of piles to those variables. Oh, this code is just, oh, I don't even like looking at it. It's just so junky and clunky. So now I'm going to, I feel like this method is not actually being used for anything, but I'm just going to leave it in there for now. So I have the get treasure piles. Why? Okay, that's bad. So let's actually return treasure piles. And am I returning a float? Yes, I am. And then let's call a different method here. Let's do public floats, get junk piles. Whoops, not files, not junk files. I almost did it again. I almost said piles. Okay, so I've got these. I just added these two methods right here. The get, nope, not that one. Get junk piles and get treasure piles. I'm gonna pop over to my pile counter where I am getting my treasure piles and my junk piles. I mean, I may as well just make a similar call here. I probably don't have a variable for that. Let's throw that in. So the reason why I need to make those methods public in the other script is so that I could access them here. I could have also made the variables public and access them through the script. I don't like doing that. Every time I have exposed variables, it ends up messing something up. So I much prefer to use a getter and get the variables that way. Sometimes making the variables public makes more sense, but in this case, I'm just, no. Okay, so the piles remaining should be I guess just the treasure piles. Does that make any sense? This seems, I'm going to comment this code out because I don't trust. So if I just do treasure piles, I guess I maybe don't even need the junk piles over in this class, but let's just see. And there are okay, and I'm being very specific about what type of piles are remaining because this was just getting really crazy. Okay, so when you find the treasure, and let's put this up. Okay, and this was the if statement that was allowing you to win the game, which I had to disable because bad things were happening. Okay, now where am I actually calling this method, this generate pile counter? I don't know that I actually need to pass something through there. I feel like maybe I can just generate the pile counter right in the start method. I mean, I could do all of this right in start, but I prefer to separate it into its own method and then just call that method. This method is being called too many times. Oh, that's, yeah. I think I solved that problem last time. So I'll just get rid of that. Okay, are we back in Unity? I think so. So now let's see what happens. Okay. So 37 junk piles, 53 treasure piles. That's at the start. That's great. There are this many spawn points, 90. Yep, we know that that's approximately correct. And now there are 0 treasure piles remaining. Now where is that? Okay, that's here. So there are 0 treasure piles remaining. So when it accesses that treasure piles variable from the, oh, I don't think you're over in code. Hold on a second. So when this method accesses the treasure piles variable, which is coming over from the grave spawner script, it must be coming over at 0. So that's a problem. So it's probably checking for this once before all of the treasure piles have been created would be my guess, which is probably why I had a call to that. I'm just gonna comment this out for now. I usually have like a giant swath of code at the bottom of each class, which is stuff that I've tried, might use again, but I don't want to quite delete yet. Okay, so then maybe here is where I want to run this, and I'm not going to pass anything in. So I already have saved a reference to the pile counters somewhere. I guess it's just a serialized field. So I can see sort of what my logic was at one point because I have the references created. So that's good. Okay, so once again, we're getting a good number, I think, of treasure piles. There are 0 treasure piles remaining. So, interestingly, in the one script here. So we want to make sure that this pile counter script is bringing over the correct float value for this treasure piles variable. And it looks like it is, because it's saying there are 54 treasure piles remaining, which is the value that it took from the grave spawner script. So that's good. However, it's also saying there are 0 piles. And I guess it's doing that. I guess it's saying that first. So like I said, for some reason I have this awake method here. I'm going to just throw this in awake as opposed to start. It's giving me the error because you cannot have 2 awake methods. Okay, so this might be better. So there are this many spawn points, 90. 36 treasure piles, 54 junk piles, 36 treasure piles remaining, 36 treasure piles remaining. Is it calling that method twice? Because it's giving me 2 print statements there. I wonder if I am mistakenly calling this method twice. However, we are making progress because it does seem like the scripts are talking to each other before, or now. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself as I'm thinking and talking at the same time. What I wanted to say was before, I think that maybe there was a problem with how I had the variables named. I had very similar names for some of the variables, too similar, and so I think I was potentially not passing the right variable over. I hope it's something that easy. That's a really simple, easy mistake to make. This is why you always want to do, like I was saying, the Control RR when you're renaming variables, or of course if you're grabbing string references, you want to like really make sure that they are the same, right? That they're spelled the same and everything, that the cases are the same. Spawn points. I'm just double checking this to see if I'm calling generate pile counter in more than one place. I don't care about that right now. Probably going to end up redoing how all of this is identified. So return number of piles. Feel like I'm probably not going to use this method, but we'll just leave it in for now. Okay, so let's go into pile counter. So when we click on a treasure, it should decrease the number of piles and recast the number of piles to the UI. And actually that's what we should check next, is to see if it is actually printing the correct number of piles to the UI. Okay, so currently it's not printing anything to the UI. It might just be that I haven't got stuff hooked up. My console looks fine, so that's good. So let's see where I've actually have things hooked up. So the reason why my hierarchy is such a mess here is because my play space was initially just this big, and I've decided that I wanted to quadruple it and have the player complete one round of the game, and then the camera zooms over here, then they complete this one, zoom over here, complete this one, and zoom over here. And I feel like in general a graveyard is, I mean, I guess you can have little tiny graveyards, but I'm thinking like one of those large spacious graveyards that has different sections. So that's what I'm trying to emulate in this game. So that screwed up a lot of things when I started trying to duplicate some of the UI elements. So where is my UI bar? Where is it though? How do I have this? Okay, I don't know why it was zooming me out. I thought for a second it was doing a different, like an overlay canvas. Okay, so here it is. Got the piles remaining. So that's the graphic, the piles image, and the text. And I have the placeholder text of 00. Okay. So it should be, oh, I see what the problem is. I totally screwed up this code. So here, which is where this is right at the top where I want to cast it to string, it needs to be, yeah, treasure piles to string. So it needs to be piles text dot text equals treasure piles to string. Treasure piles dot to string is not going to really do anything. You actually have to tell it where to go. And then I have this TextMesh Pro UGUI serialized field here. Remember, if you're using that, you need to have the TM Pro namespace. If you're using any UI elements, so like a slider, an image, just a normal text field, a button, you need to have the UI. I think it's UnityEngine.UI namespace up at the top. Let's try that again. Okay, so we have a number, yay! And let's check the console. So there are 47 treasure piles. So that is the number that we have here at the top of the UI. Yay, that is exciting. Now, what happens if I click on something? Ah, it's actually decreasing. Yes, and it's not just crazily decreasing either. Okay. That is awesome. Okay, perfect. Okay, that's where I wanted to get to. So that's great. Looks like it's actually working. So I guess it seems like that was too simple, but I guess it was just my variable names that were all mismatched. But they were matching enough that it was like halfway working, which is sort of weird. Okay, so I'm just trying to think here. So the next issue is that I'm going to just try this again. So the next issue is that once this play space is done, I want the camera to shoot you to another play space. But the way that I have it set up is that it is counting all of the grays for the whole play space. So it's not going to know that I've just selected the right, just done the graves in this play space. And this was why initially I had this convoluted switch statement that was going to sort of switch between the different canvases. And now I'm thinking I might have to institute something like that again, because I'm just not sure how it's going to know that I've completed this play space. The cells meant to be scattered like that. Oh, you mean like the white squares? Yeah, no, this is just temporary. It's terrible looking. I'm basically just testing, and then I will work on the positioning later. And they're also not going to be white because it's ugly. They're going to be where is my? I should actually test this and make sure it's going to go. Yeah, so it's going to be more like that. I don't know why those white dots are there. They appeared, but this is what it's actually going to look like. The arrangement of the graves is not good still. But you can get more of an idea of what it'll look like. And I want to have some more like scenery elements here, some more dynamic stuff. I also have programmed some enemy AI because when I first released this, there weren't that many obstacles to winning. So I have programmed a bit of enemy AI in a previous stream. I'm going to just crank that back up so I can see it. Okay. Thinking I might try to make that put that convoluted switch statement back in. Because it's not going to know to swap between the different play fields. There's just one other thing I want to try here too. Yeah, okay. So we're still doing the jumping. So what I'm pressing, I just have this for testing. I just have it locked to the space bar, so the camera is jumping between the different quadrants here. Oh, no, so yeah, like that. It's just going around in a circle. And of course I want the UI to come as well. So I wonder if I can just child the, never done this before. Can I actually child, oh, I don't know if I can child the UI to the camera. I wonder if I can do something really funky. This is all very new to me, so this is probably going to blow up in my face. But I'm just going to find a script that's, this is a script that's residing on the UI canvas, and I wonder if I can do something like in the update method, do the transform.position of this is the, is it camera main dot? I think, I can't remember the syntax, something like that. Is that going to show up? Okay, it is. Now that's still not going to be great because then it's going to go to where the camera is, which is not going to be exactly where I want the UI, like the camera is going to be positioned in the center of the game space, and I want the UI to be up. I could do something complicated, like maybe program an offset, but I still think it would be best if I could child it to the camera. I just honestly like playing around and seeing if I can pull off weird stuff. Yeah, I mean, debug log is definitely the better choice. It's the choice that professionals will recommend to you. I just got in the habit of using print just because it's faster. And usually I'm just like doing it temporarily, and then I'll take the print statement out pretty quickly after that. But yeah, I know that debug log is like the recommended command to use there. Yeah, so it is actually working, but it's screwed up because, like I said, the camera is positioned, or the UI bar is positioned where the camera is. So since the camera is in the center there, it's just going right to the center. But that's cool because I didn't know that you could do it like that. Just going out and commenting out that code that I just put in. Okay, I don't know if I can child UI to the camera. That seems really crazy to me. So since it's a UI, I'm going to throw a canvas. I don't know if you can put a canvas on a camera. That sounds really weird to me, but I don't. Let's just try. Okay. Yeah, so that screwed up a whole bunch of stuff because it needs to be, it needs to be on the game canvas where everything else resides. So that's not really going to work. The way that this game is set up is just not great. And I think I was saying that in another stream that honestly, it might be faster for me to just remake the game. It's not a very complicated game, and I just have things childed, and like my hierarchy is a mess, and just the way sprites are on top of each other, the layering and stuff is just not good. But I've challenged myself to try to figure this out. I mean, this is something you might be doing as a developer, right? Is coming in and picking up someone else's code and trying to make sense of it without having to totally rewrite it. Okay, so I could try to do, maybe I could try to do an offset. So I guess it would just be, I'm just trying to see where the camera position is. Oh yeah, it's right there. Okay, yeah, I'm just not going to worry about that right now because I'm not actually sure how I want the UI to interact. I'm going to worry more about making it so that the camera jumps to the next play space once the first play space has found all of, or once the player has found all of the treasure graves in the first play space. Oh, shoot. And I didn't want to have to do it like this, but I feel like I might have to do it. I'm sure there's a better way, but I feel like I might try to do it with the switch statement, but this is going to be such a pain to do it like this. Okay, I might have to do it. Just trying to see where these rows are. Okay, what I'm gonna do, would I use more than I put, and then I use your variable. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's another good way to do it. That's a good tip. Okay, I'm going to actually child my dirt piles, which are actually spawn points, is what they should be named. To the different quadrants. So rather than call this row 1, I'm going to call this quadrant, and then the next one will be quadrant 1. And it's not going to look like this. Oh, do I already have it like this? No, I don't think I do. Okay, so that's going to be the first quadrant. So actually, yeah, let's make row 1. And we'll dump all these in row 1, row 2, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's the first quadrant. Yep. And this one. And yeah. Okay, so these other canvases I actually have disabled. So I'm going to separate the grave spawn points into the different quadrants. That's just what I'm doing right now. This is just going to take me a few minutes of boringness. I don't generally like just going in and crazily deleting things from the hierarchy, but that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, so quadrant, that's 3 and 4. Boom. This is why I'm not being too precious about where my spawn points are, because I've moved them around like a million times just in the course of trying to do this. Okay, so quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3. I guess it's still not gonna help me unless I just spawn the piles that are in the first quadrant. I'm just not sure how I could get a hold of that. I mean, I could serialize it. I like to not, it's so easy to have like a million serialized fields at the top of your classes. And I like to try to do stuff with code when I can. So let's go back into the code. So we're finding right now all of the game objects with the tag spawn point. I wonder if I could just get, oh, I know there's a way. So this is where, sorry, I'll come back into Unity. So the script is existing on this gray spawn points game object right now. I know that I can go in and get the children, which are these quadrants here. I'm just not sure if I can get, say, just the first child and then get the children of that first child. There's probably going to be a way to do that, and I can't think off the top of my head how to get the children in an array. Hold on just one second. I haven't Googled yet tonight, so that's exciting. Oh yeah, maybe I can just do so I know it's the, oh, I don't think you're in Visual Studio. I know it's the transform, type transform that I want. Whoops, and I always put the, I always want to put the square brackets at the wrong, in the wrong section. Get components and children. Oh, whoops. Okay, and then we'll just say for each transform child in children, print the name, so prints child.name. And let's see what happens. Sorry, I'm like up in my head thinking, so I'm not super chatty here. I'm not super chatty tonight, but hopefully you're enjoying yourself, maybe doing some coding yourself. Yeah, so it's saying that's the problem, is that it is saying all of the children. So not just the quadrants, but all of the children. Quadrant, dirt pile, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, quadrant. Okay, so that's not going to work because we want just the top level child. We want just the quadrants. So back to Google. Oh, you know what I could do actually is maybe I could just do give a tag to the quadrants. Let's just try that. So once again, make sure that when you are making a new tag, you're actually assigning it to the game objects. This should probably be a prefab rather than having to do this manually. I'm actually curious whether or not there's a benefit to running the for loop first. I guess there isn't, because when you're doing the game objects, find objects with tag, you're searching everything. I wish there was a way though to just confine it to those children, because I know that the game find the game objects, any of the find calls I think are pretty expensive calls. So this will be game objects. Oh my gosh, no, not game objects. Game object. Quadrants. I'm still going to keep this in. I'm just going to comment it out just in case I need it. And now we're going to be changing this to game object quadrant. In quadrants, we're going to print the quadrants dot name. That's good, because then we're storing the quadrants in an array, which is what I'm going to need. So that way I can do I'm going to do a selector, which is going to start at 0. Oh, yeah, probably can't have that as a variable name. I'll just say current quadrant, I guess. I hate that word quadrant. Okay. And, oh, because I'm using this, I want to use this to select what position in the array I am. I believe it needs to be an int. And I should probably put it actually up here. And I think it should just, is it initialized at 0 without me saying that? I'm not sure. I'll just leave it like that. Okay, so now let's go back in. So if you've watched my streams before, I was doing something like this last week. So I'm just sort of rewriting that code and trying it again. Yeah, okay. So it's finding the quadrants, which is great. Now I'm hoping that I have the means to reference the objects that I want to reference so that I don't need to do it through serialized fields. That's the goal of this. Okay, so the spawn points is going to be Let me do something really dirty and bad. And go into my prefab. For my spawn point. And I'm going to add a spawn point script. So that way I have a way to reference it through a script, which for now is going to be empty, which is again not the best way to do this, but I'm just experimenting, so let's see how this goes. Okay, so we're gonna start oh my gosh, what am I trying to do here? So oh no, I don't think that's gonna work, is it? Oh my goodness, this is complicated. I should have just done it the way that I had it a couple weeks ago, which I thought was way more complicated, but now I see that it's easier. Yeah. Oh shoot, and I had a good switch statement written and now I can't remember how I did it. And the current quadrant is going to be quadrant. Like we'll start it there. Quadrants. Oh, it's not the same type, is it? Oh no, the current quadrant. Oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing? We need a actual oh, I see. Oh, I don't have a game object there. I was thinking that I had identified the quadrant as a game object. I might actually need to get a reference to it that way. Okay, so I remember how I did this. I had a string reference and stuff. That's not gonna work. Let's make this a game object. Yeah, this should be this, which I then need to not define down there. That's my first problem. Yeah, I think I'm going to do a switch statement, maybe with quadrant numbers. It's going to work. And now I have to actually remember how to do a switch statement off the top of my head. I still don't think this is going to work. Shoot. So I basically am trying to, over in Unity, I have these different quadrants, and then I want to get a hold of any children in the quadrant that have this spawn point scripts attached to them. So I guess maybe I need this transform text again. It's a good thing I saved it. So this is going to be transform. And then let's just say quadrants 0. Well, I guess it'll be current quadrants, which will start at quadrants. Current quadrant is going to be the quadrant that we're on, which is going to start at the first one, so 0. So get the children of that. And then for each child and children, I guess we probably want to do a null check here because not all of them will have a spawn point script on it. So if we have that, oh, this is getting this is getting convoluted, but sure, let's just print the name of it. So print the name of that child. And we'll probably want to do something like put them in a list potentially. Okay, and I'm gonna just get rid of this because I already know that it's printing the right quadrants. So that's great. Oh, thank you for the follow. Hopefully I haven't scared too many people off. Okay, so now hopefully I'm gonna just, even before I run this code, I'm gonna just make sure that quadrant 0 is the quadrant that I want it, that I'm thinking it is. So quadrants 0.name. I'm being a little bit overboard here with checking, but I just want to make sure that I have the right commands over what I'm doing before I get in too deep. Yes, okay, so it's printing the name quadrant. So the way that the naming system goes in Unity is when you're duplicating things, you'll start with quadrant, and then when you hit duplicate, I always mess it up between this and Blender. It's either Control D or Control or Shift D. The next item will be 1, then 2, then 3. But then, of course, there are 4 items, right? So it does it like it's an array, which is good. Okay, now I'm just jumping back into Visual Studio and just erasing those comment markers that I had in. Now I actually want to try to run this and see if it's going to populate that list of children. There are this many spawn points, 100. So that's also interesting. Oh, probably because I duplicated the spawn points. So my total spawn points has increased. Hopefully that's not a bug. And it's not actually printing. Did I not have a print statement? I may not have had a print statement. So if get component spawn point, and I'm just going to double check and make sure that's actually the name spawn point script. Yeah. Else. I'm just throwing an else statement here to complete my if statement. No component found. Okay. So it's not finding the spawn points in the way that I was hoping it would. Yeah, no component found. Spawn points. And I'm not really sure why it's not. Okay. Let's just back this up a little bit and just print the name of the child. I might have already done this, but let's just do this again. So just to make sure that I'm actually getting the children that I thought I was getting. Speaking of children, I'm going to have to end this stream in a few short minutes because my kids need to get to bed. Yeah, so dirt pile. Yeah, it's finding them. But I'm not sure why it's... not finding that. So... oh, okay. I think I actually have to have a reference to the child or else I'm looking for whether or not the component that this script is sitting on also has that spawn point script. So hopefully that's what I was doing wrong there. Okay, there we go. So we're getting a reference to, and I'm not going to count and make sure it's absolutely correct, but it seems to be fairly correct, so I'm going to just take it and run. So it is correctly identifying the spawn points. So there are 25 of them that have the spawn point script and 5 of them that don't in this list of children under quadrant 1. And that makes sense because some of the children, like this row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, and it's probably counting itself as well, don't have the script attached. So that is good. It's correctly identifying those. Okay, so and sorry, I think you're still in Unity. I'm just trying something sort of crazy just to end the stream here. Okay, so now I'm trying to hook up the functionality that I was toying around with before, and let's see how big of a mess I've created. Okay. So it's not sending this over correctly, but I think it might actually be doing what I want it to do. So initially when the stream started tonight, oh no, that's, hold on a second. So generate graves. Yeah, no, that's right. So I'm gonna just get that out of there. So initially when the stream started tonight, I was taking an array of spawn points. No, I wasn't. I was using the find game objects with tag to populate the array of spawn points. And then I was just instantiating a grave at every spawn point all over the screen. but I wanted to divide that into quadrants. So I created an array of quadrants here, which I've declared up here. That should not be serialized. I hope that's not screwing something up. Ooh, I hope that didn't screw something up. Okay. I'm getting a hold of the children of the first quadrant, and the idea is that I will cycle through the quadrants. So this number, which is the quadrant number, will continue to increase. Once the first quadrant has been populated, then it'll increase and go to the second quadrant, etc. Then for each of those children in that array of children, I'm going to check to see if it has a spawn point script on it, which will identify it as a spawn point. And remember, that's just an empty script that's sitting there. If the component is found, then I'm going to generate the graves and send over the child.gameObject. And I need that game object on the end there because it is of type transform, the child. So we need to actually reference the game object. And then it sends it over there. And then for some of the children of the quadrant will not have the component on it because they're just like category names. It's not like an actual game object. It's an empty game object. That's what I'm trying to say. I knew there was a word for it. So I'm going to just play that one more time. Oh no, something crazy has happened. Oh, okay, it's fine. I just had a print statement that was referencing a variable that I had commented out, so it was freaking out. And this is decreasing. It's not consistently decreasing, but it is sort of going down. So that's good. It's moving. It's not a negative number, so that's good. Last stream we had this down to like minus 800 and something, so that's not happening. And I see too that only one quadrant is being populated at a time with graves, so that's great. That's what I was looking for. So hopefully I'm on my way with this code. So once again, the idea is that I will play the first level here, get the number of graves remaining down to 0, zoom up, and the UI will come with us, hopefully childed to the camera. Do this quadrant, get all the graves here, zoom over here, do this quadrant, zoom over here, do this quadrant, and then that will be the end of the level. And I want to have some sort of like actual overworld system in, so I started programming. There's nothing here, but yeah, like I want to have there be an overworld where you do stuff. The idea is that the game is supposed to be taking place like at night, so maybe like doing the whole graveyard lasts a night, and then you go back to the overworld, do some resource management or item management or item buying or something like that, and then the next night comes and you go back to the graveyard. So I think that's where I'm going to end it for tonight. Can't even talk anymore. I can tell I'm getting tired. Pretty happy that I was able to sort some of that out. I still feel like I can't trust that initial problem was solved so easily with just a mismatch in variable names, but sometimes that's what happens, I guess, and sometimes problems are easy to solve. I'm used to problems taking like days and days of me having to come back and research and stuff, so that's good. Okay, so it is Tuesday, so I will be streaming again on Sunday. I generally stream on Sundays and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. I know that's a little bit early for some of you, but I really appreciate you coming out to the stream and supporting the stream. Hopefully you've enjoyed yourself, maybe learned something, and yeah, thanks for wading through my crazy experimenting around with the code. I know there are much more direct ways of doing things, but like I said earlier in the stream, this is sort of my chance to relax and play a little bit and have some fun, because I think that's the best way that you learn in Unity. Okay, so hopefully I will see you next time, and thank you guys so much for coming out. Have a wonderful night.